So welcome everyone to the March Professional Captains Association Pro Seminar Series. My name is Kit Van Wagner. I am the Director of Operations here with PCA. And I am very pleased this month to be working with Captain Madison Olson. She's actually joining us all the way from across the Atlantic in Mallorca, Spain. So I'm going to turn it over to her in a second here, but I did just want to say we are running these seminars just about monthly until the summer season when we'll take a little break. And as we go through the seminar, please feel free to use the chat feature in Zoom. You can introduce yourself. You can ask Madison questions as she's going through her presentation. And then once she's done, we'll go into the chat to look for questions. We'll also open it up for questions live. So do feel free to take advantage of that chat feature. In addition, the recording that we're making right now is going to go onto the Confident Captain YouTube channel. So you can find it there. I will post that link in our next newsletter as well, the Captain's Dispatch, which goes out monthly. And so I think that's it on housekeeping. So at this point, I do want to introduce briefly Captain Madison Olson. She is incredible, inspirational role model, I think, for a lot of people. She has really taken to the sea, pursuing her dreams of being on the water. She's been single-handing small sailboats in some pretty rough conditions. I think if I remember correctly, you've done the equivalent of twice around the world now in terms of miles under sail, which is pretty impressive. So she's going to talk a little bit today about not only her story and how she got where she is, but how her U.S. Coast Guard license really helped her achieve some of these goals and objectives, and is still serving her very much in her career. So I do want to just let folks know the connection may come and go a little bit, so we'll all have some patience with Madison's connection since she's coming in from across the Atlantic. It is what it is, and we'll make the most of it. So Madison, I'm going to turn it over to you with that, if you want to share screen and show us your slides. And we look forward to hearing from you all in the chat as we go. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kit. I'll share my presentation with you now so you guys can see the slides I've put together. One moment. Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Madison Olson. I'm a captain. I'm 29 years old, and my pro seminar is about sailing in all circuits, and it's basically about my journey in sailing and how I've started and where it's led me, which is many places, because I've kind of gone in one direction and then gone the very different direction quickly thereafter. So this is my pro seminar. So people can learn about the different ways that we can follow our sailing dreams. I'll just go over a few things I'll chat with you about today. I'll go over my personal background and everything that led me to where I've gotten in professional sailing, my years in professional sailing, which I've been involved in for now a bit over 10 years. What led me to get my U.S. captain's license and how I got it. Right after that, the sailing that I did, and then the career changes that I've gone through, my personal campaign and offshore sailing, which is what I seek to strive for from now and for the rest of my sailing career, and future expectations and campaigns that I would like to pursue. So first up, my relationship with the sea. I was born in 1992 in Key West, Florida, to a sailing family. My father is a professional mariner, and his father before that, all over the world. Starting for me in Key West, but my father had started in Belgium, where you learn to sail, and then in the Mediterranean and transatlantic sailing. Shortly after I was born in Key West, I moved to the Florida Panhandle, where I continued to sail. And in 2001, I purchased my first sailboat, or me and my family purchased my first sailboat, which was just a little boat to work on in the backyard. But we named it the Kingfisher because when I was growing up, the biggest event for sailing that I remember, at least with a woman involved, was when Ellen MacArthur became the fastest woman to compete in the Vendée Globe and was the second to do so, or came in second place. So after that, in 2003, going with my maritime way, I constructed my first wooden dory with the help of my father. It was a plank on frame boat. My father built wooden spiral staircases for a living, but also did both land and sea woodwork. So I grew up with that kind of engineer construction background, and that had a huge influence on my life. And in 2005, when I was growing up, Hurricane Katrina hit. I was living in the Panhandle. That's where I spent high school and did all of my younger years in school. And after the hurricane devastated New Orleans, we actually were able to salvage a sailboat, a 44 Islander sloop in the bayou. And so when I was young, after we salvaged the boat, it was perfectly fine and the hull was completely intact. We just had to change the mast and then also add in more interior. And so I spent my formative years anchored off the coast of Florida Panhandle as a teenage girl on a 40-foot sailboat. And in the Panhandle of Florida, if anyone's familiar with the area, it's quite shallow for quite a far away. So growing up, my route to school really had a lot to do with taking a tender and going through the extremes of nature, in essence. Anybody from that area or has been to that area of the country would know that there's the Christmas winds start kicking in. Quite a lot to deal with. So I was late for school from time to time. And growing up, when I was studying in school, I spent my time on deck with a head torch, studying calculus in the middle of the night before school the next day. So it was a very interesting way to grow up and understand the weather and the sea state and constantly be involved in that natural environment. So there was never a moment when I was growing up, because of this unique lifestyle and the fact that we were anchored offshore instead of being in the marina, where I wasn't completely thinking about the wind direction, the clouds, the sea state, any little thing, and checking and listening to the weather radio constantly. And then that led in 2010, I graduated high school and I was going to seek higher education, and I was accepted into the University of Vermont, which is quite far from where I grew up, and it's the opposite of what I had been raised with. It was kind of my own personal teenage rebellion, where you are going from something you know, which is the ocean, and being in this this beautiful place, to living next to a lake and going for something that's quite cold in the winters and doing something different. And so that's where I went to go study and learn more about my future of what I was striving to do. But I kind of learned in that time frame that one, university is quite expensive, and as most people know, and two, that it was just not being on the ocean was definitely not for me. So in 2011, my father moved to Key West. So instead of staying in Vermont for the holidays, I came down to Key West to see him for the first time since I was born there. And that definitely was a huge turning point in my life. for what I was going to do, because I was going from living in Vermont and working in a pizza place part-time to going back to being on the ocean, taking a tender out every day, and then what led to me to work on a boat myself. And so in that time frame, I was about to leave. I got a message from the university saying that I wasn't able to make the right credit to stay with my loans for school. And at that point, I found out that instead of staying in university, I had no choice but to leave because I couldn't find a co-signer for my loans. And I had to go back to Key West and go to work, in essence. So that was a very big move in my life. And the job that I originally went to in Key West, the first place I ended up going to was a schooner, about 100-year-old schooner in Key West called the Schooner Western Union. And that was kind of the big start for me in the way of finding my own professional way, because before working with my father, I just had only the experience of doing everything kind of governed by him. And that wasn't a bad thing, but it was definitely necessary for me to get my own job unrelated to him on a boat, so I could develop my own interest in it instead of just being raised around it, which so many of us kind of do with our parents. We might always be surrounded by a certain trade and you kind of rebel, but you have to come back to it on your own terms, if that is where your passions lie. And that's definitely where mine ended up relying. And so on to the next slide. This also, this picture is a photo of the sailing yacht Elia coming back into Antigua after we left Palma de Mallorca a few years ago before COVID. And next, so the start of my professional career was this moment when I was 18. I get to Key West, I get my own job on a schooner. It's about 100 feet long with the bowsprit. It's almost 100 years old, but it was a replica of a cabling schooner from the days of old when they laid cable between the U.S. and South America and in the Caribbean. And it was a historic preservation society in Key West. So it was kind of like a floating museum, but it's also quite interesting on this boat when it comes to the sailing world and the boats you see that I've worked on since then, because it didn't have much of a draft. It didn't have much of a keel because it was meant to beach itself. So to get to lay these cables. So when you're sailing these big schooners, it kind of sailed sideways. It didn't really hold a course. It still had quite a lot of sail area, but that was its purpose, to kind of be that slow boat. But in the time, it was the most amazing thing for a young girl to be involved in. I was the deckhand on board. I was the newest crew member of a crew of about 6, including the captain, and we were just going on day sails and stargazing sails in the middle of the night with a professional astronomer to point out constellations and kind of teach us about how these different things have affected people in the past. But this boat was also really interesting, and it's one boat that I would like to use a similar model in the future on crewed vessels that I work on, because everybody switched jobs every day. So you would start one day, you'd start on the stern first next to the captain until you were trained, and then you'd go to the bow, you'd go midships, and every day you changed roles. So you weren't used to doing any specific thing necessarily or any bad habit consistently. And also working on a massive schooner, which if you have done that in the past or have sailed in the classic scene, you know you're dealing with massive lines and you're coiling hundreds of feet of line a day. So it's a great way to get in shape and have enough callus on your hands to not feel things on a normal basis. So that was my first job. That was what really started me off. And when I was 18, I would have told you that my only dream would be to work on boats for 100 years old that were made of wood. And at that moment, that was what I was interested in. But we all change. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I still would totally go back to working in the schooners full time. So the next thing is what I was doing is, because I was interested in it, I kind of filled my space. I was learning by doing. So if I wasn't working on these day charters or these sunset charters or stargazer charters, I was going into the shipyards and I was doing these day work routine, which you'll see a lot if you're an entry-level sailor in the industry, or even if you've been around for a long time. There's always people that day work. And basically I would go into any shipyard, and whatever boat needed work, if it was paint, if it was fiberglass, if it was just polishing stainless, and any little bits I would try to be involved in and learn more, because you'd get paid to do it. You'd also learn how to do a job, because generally on boats, everybody, even if we do the same job, has some specificity to put into it on how they like to do it, especially when it comes to varnish, if you've worked on classic boats. So you really can kind of get a feel of just learning from each and every person you work for on different vessels all around. And so that kind of builds me up to understanding a lot of engineering as well. My father was doing a lot of engineering, and he would always get me involved, because a small girl and engine rooms on smaller boats are they go well together. So anyone can do it. The next thing that happened to me is when I was about 20 years old. I decided because I came to Key West when I was about 19, and I left at 20 to move to the Virgin Islands, because I got the nick for sailing and I made some good money in Key West on these sailboats, but it wasn't enough, and I knew I couldn't find more there because I had no interest in living in Florida at the time. So I moved further south to the Virgin Islands, and that really was the best place to me to sail in different terrain, in essence, different sea states, further south, different kind of boats, because you have a lot more charter boats, and there's a lot different kinds. In Key West, there were obviously day charter boats, but you're going in and out. In the Virgin Islands, you can go and stop at a different island every day. You can go out for a week, you can go out for longer if you want. So I wanted to get that experience of just go for a few hours of docking in and out of boats. Okay, great. To having an experience of going out and seeing different things and playing with anchoring and mooring in different harbors. And the best place, I thought at the time, for me was U.S. Virgin Islands, which is why I went there next. It also helped because it's U.S., so you don't have to worry about any sort of visa or permits. You can just go and figure it out from there. So I go to the Virgin Islands. I moved to St. John, the smallest island, and then I started work in a dive shop. So it's kind of every step of the way. Every time I've changed place, I've kind of started back at the bottom, and they kind of made my way up. And I think that's quite important for people who are trying to move around the world to understand. Even if you have lots of experience and you're in these new environments, you kind of have to bring yourself back down to make a name for yourself in a new place. And so in the dive shop, I was just servicing tanks and doing a few things and waiting and doing occasional charters on the boats when they would let me, on a big catamaran that took a lot of people, until I got the chance to work on a day charter boat. And that was doing day or multiple day trips, private. It was a Jeanneau 45. And so we were just going out and just sailing as hard as we could in between the islands and showing people different places. And I really learned a lot about sail handling and what it was like to change from these different boats, because you have to remember I started on a 100-foot schooner. So going out with a 20-foot bowsprit, you have a different kind of understanding of your surroundings when you move to a 40-foot Jeanneau and you're going in the Caribbean and mooring up and going to Yost Van Dyke in the BVI where there's 100 other boats anchored. So each time you have one of these jobs, you learn the pros and cons of it exactly. And so So basically from 18 to 21, I spent time learning and working in lower positions to accumulate seat time and to have an understanding and take what I could get when it came to information. Also being a young woman, you know, you have to really you have to go for all these different positions and see what you can get and what you can do and learn and just be understanding and know that every boat is different and yeah, and log your miles to reach your dream. That leads me to the next. So these are the different boats so you can kind of see before I got my license. This is where I started. You've got in the top right corner, you've got the schooner Western Union. In the top left corner, it's a yawl called Cimarron, an old wooden boat. And that's the charter boat in the Caribbean that I was working on. There's Jeanneau's just underneath it in the bottom left corner. And then there's two catamarans that do kind of the big day charters that you would see in Key West also, where they have lots of people, and Newport as well. And so this was my first entrance in the different kinds of jobs I was approaching when I arrived. And before I logged all the miles and committed to getting a license and stepping up. And so my license, when I was 20, I was about 21 years old. I think I was fresh 21 at the time. Made the decision to get my captain's license, and I was egged on literally by almost everyone in my community. It's one thing I've been very grateful for in my career is that I've always had people that have pushed me to do more, even if I wasn't necessarily totally secure or confident in what I was doing at the time. So that was incredible. But the ultimate decision to go for your license can feel overwhelming, that's sure. It's costly and time consuming. It takes quite a while. There's a lot of paperwork. It can feel scary. And I was very young, so I wasn't totally sure I was ready. I hear from a lot of other people, they think, oh, I'm not capable of wire splicing or doing certain like minute details on boats, so therefore they can't go for their license. I disagree with that completely. You learn on the way and everything comes to you. But once you have it and you can go for it, it teaches you so much more, and it's such an incredible experience to meet other people that you'll be in contact with for the rest of your life, and help each other out and learn other things. And once you get one license, say you get your OUPV, the 6-pack, and then you go on for your 25-ton or 50 or 100-ton, and then to your 200 and on and on. So it's a further education. It really goes through quite a lot in your life. And the course will teach you useful information that's relevant, whether you're a sailor, a tugboat captain, or a pleasure boater. So everybody can come together, and all of those people of all those different backgrounds also help each other forever. I mean, now I work in offshore sailing, but I have plenty of friends I would call in the case of needing to understand something, because the tugboat captain might be a better engineer in certain things than me, or might understand maritime law in a specific sense. So everybody always can have a piece to add in this world for that. And then also it can lead you to working internationally. For me, that's the biggest thing it helped me do. Is you get your license, and then all of a sudden you have the ability to work in all of these different industries you didn't really think of before, because before my license, I would say you would just be going for these little deckhand jobs on day charter boats and kind of staying quite local and not really seeing a bigger picture to the maritime world and what you can be a part in it, if that is what you are seeking to strive for. And then after you get your license and you see you can build on it, you can open up to bigger jobs. You can be a captain of smaller boats or bigger boats, depending on your license and what it's registered for, whether it's near coastal or inland. Or you can go and you can be a mate on a bigger boat that goes internationally. So it really does a lot to enhance your career and keep you learning. And I think for me, the biggest thing with the captain's license, because I wasn't able to finish my university degree because of the overall cost. And I think for young people that are interested in being in the maritime industry, is that you can really use this, and the money and the time is instantly rewarded. It's one of the few trades that you're instantly in it. You can learn. You can get paid to learn most of it before you get before you get all of your miles to submit to get your license. You can do these jobs that pay you and as you go. So in university, it's 4 years, most of which you can't work full time or make money, and you just get in crippling debt. But with your captain's license, it's really, you make money on the way to getting it. Once you get it, you pay back the money almost instantly, and it opens up a whole new can of worms for the rest of your life. And I think that's really good for this day and age for young people to find a job that is perfect for you. So after my U.S. captain's license, basically, like I said before I got my license, I started off in the schooner, and then I was going on to day charter boats. Both were really great, but I still felt a pull for something more. I always say, and a lot of us in sailing always say, you're always looking over your shoulder for the nicer boat or the bigger boat or something like that, thinking, oh, the grass is always greener over there. This is what I want. And my eye fell on the bigger super yachts that were coming through the Virgin Islands, and I was like, one day I'm gonna work on that boat, one of these J class or these massive Baltics. So super yacht racing was really, these are two different things, but also the same, because I worked on super yachts, I've worked on race boats, and I've raced super yachts. So that's where my captain's license kind of instantly led me to go. And one of the first things I did is I went to Newport, Rhode Island, and I was the captain of a 76-foot racing boat. And the thrill of it was really the best for me. I didn't race as a child. I wasn't an opti sailor or a dinghy sailor of any sort. That wasn't my thing. I didn't really have any of those opportunities. But now all of a sudden I'm in these classic yacht regattas throughout New England and loving every minute of it. The spirit, the fight, the competition, it's something else, and it definitely hooked me into understanding how I wanted to shape my future was doing this. And so the first thing was, okay, I like this racing and I like classic yachts. So I'm staying with the classic yacht thing and keep going with that. So you've seen like 10 different styles of boats that I've been working on, and I'm in these classic yacht races. And then all of a sudden I get a job on a different kind of super yacht, sailing across the Atlantic, a carbon super yacht, and racing also in America, but also in Saint-Tropez. So I crossed the Atlantic for the first time on a super yacht. We get to Saint-Tropez, we race, it's great. I realized also then that once I got to the Mediterranean, I was pretty sold on living here for a while, and this is good for me. And so that those new doors were open to me and what I was looking to do. And like I said in this, obtaining my captain's license led me on working from 40-foot boats to 150-foot boats. It doesn't mean you always should go bigger in your size of boat. I happen to do that, and that's where it led me, and it's been great, and I love it, especially with international yacht deliveries, which I've done a lot of as well, going back and forth from Bermuda to Newport and then down to the Virgin Islands, and then now back and forth over across the Atlantic between the U.S. and Mallorca or Saint-Tropez and then back to the Caribbean. And so the top left picture is of a super yacht I worked on, Nalaya, Baltic 35-meter, as we'd say in Europe. And then on the right side is a Swan 90 called Umiko, which I've done race prep for and sailed from Trinidad all throughout the Caribbean, and still is one of my the boats I sail on once I get back from the Caribbean. So yeah, that's basically you're always learning, and this is how this industry goes. So anything can help you. Once you have your license, you can really start fine tuning where you want to go in this world. And so this was my next step at that time frame. And so I was about 25 to 27 was around this when I was really in this scene. Next. And now we'll talk about my current project, which is even more different than that. So the last thing I'm doing is I'm super yacht racing, which is the complete opposite of what my current project is. I fully would like to be a solo offshore sailor on something called a mini. And in France, you've got something called the Mini Transat. It happens every 2 years, and it's on 6.5-meter boats, which is 21 feet in US terms. And every 2 years, there's a race across the Atlantic. There's usually about 90 boats, sometimes less, sometimes more. And they go from, it changes year by year, but usually around Brittany, Northwest France, down to the Canaries for a stop, and then over to Guadeloupe or Martinique, one of the Caribbean islands. And this race has been kind of the stepping stone for people that are interested in the Vendée Globe or Figaro campaign, Class 40, you name it, in offshore sailing. And to get there, in order to be a part of these races, it's not just something that you just jump into. It's really a quite well-oiled machine in offshore sailing. You have to get several certifications. In order to get your U.S. captain's license, you need an STCW, basic safety, to understand how to prevent any sort of issue at sea and on your boat, and understanding your surroundings. For this race, you also have to get basically the same thing through the World Sailing Federation. So you're qualified to understand how to do basic things at sea when it comes to using your medical kit and calling for help if that does come about. And so you have this training, and then you have to get licensed through the FFWA, the French Federation for sailing, and then that's when you can start your training. And so the Mini Transat is solo, and it's unassisted, which means you are alone. There is no cell phone, there's no GPS, it's just you. And so to qualify, you need 1,500 nautical miles in total of regattas, and there's Class A, B, and C regattas in the Mini. C being the easiest. A class race would be the Mini, or another race called Les Sables Azores, which leaves from Northwest France and goes to the Azores and back nonstop. And so you start in Class C, and the smaller, it's usually around 300 nautical mile races offshore, and some of those can be double-handed as well. And so after you do these races, and you go from C, B, and then qualify for A, whether it's for the Mini Transat or to do the Sables Azores, then you can qualify. But on top of that, you also have to do 1,000 nautical miles in your own boat, because it all has to be done in your own boat to qualify, in order to show mental and physical fitness. So there's a route out of Northwest France, and it goes basically up to the Fastnet Rockner Island and comes back down. And then you log your time, and you're in no rut. It's not really a race. You can do it to achieve a record if you wish, but most people don't, because they want to take it easy on their sails. But you never know. It's quite a rough area of the ocean. Anything can change. The Bay of Biscay is known for being angry at times. And so this whole process is what you do to qualify for the Mini. And it's usually about 2 years to make that. And it is a true test of human endurance. So for me, I've spent the last 1 year on a Mini 650 prototype, because there's 2 classes in the Mini. There's series and proto. It's kind of exactly what you would think if you're familiar with the sailing world. A series boat's going to be a carbon or a fiberglass boat that's kind of a production. And so they're all going to be the same. Depending on the make, there's a couple different. Pogo makes one, and then IDB, which is a French company, makes a few, Nasira. And so they're all going to look quite the same. They might change a little bit over the years since they've been produced. But then there's prototype, which is exactly what it sounds like. It can be carbon. It can have a canting keel. It can have foils now, which they've just started, obviously, since it's only really come out and been perfected for offshore sailing in the last few years. You can have a movable mast foot, water ballast. And I've spent the last year on a carbon prototype 931 with dagger boards and a canting keel. It has a movable mast foot, but not a rotating mast. So it's quite easy when it comes to a prototype in general, because there's so many little parts that go into it. And obviously when you're offshore sailing solo in France, especially because it's from there, there's an autopilot system called NKE, which is the best of the best. Most people know BNG for their autopilots, and that's reliable, but that's not up to standard in France, because you need something that can take in all of the different pieces you want. You want it to be extra reliable, and you can gauge these NK autopilots kind of like a radar, how you would adjust the gain. You do the same thing on these pilots. So if you're in steep sea states, you can set the pilot and go and conserve your energy to sleep for on average around 1 hour at a time over a few hours. But it's not something you set in stone. You're not saying you sleep 15 minutes every 2 hours. It's something you have to play as you go. If the weather's nice and you're offshore, then take some sleep if you can get it. But if the weather's bad, especially if you're close to shore, especially if you're in France, then you really need to be careful and understanding of where you are, because the Bay of Biscay and a lot of these races being around Brittany, you've got a lot of current and tide and shipping and fish pots, just like anyone in Newport and Maine would understand, and rocks. It's quite a lot, and fog as well. Any of you Maine sailors would understand that extremely well. It can be quite difficult having these little boats out there, but you have to know what you're doing. That's why I relocated to do it here in France. Oh, I'm in Spain now, but why I live in France, because they've been really pumping out the best in offshore sailing for generations and generations. They've definitely made a name for themselves in it, and it's been quite a challenge, because you have to learn the language, have to speak French to live in France to do this kind of project. I would say if anybody else is interested in doing a mini transat, a Class 40 campaign, a Figaro campaign, or maybe a future Vendée Globe campaign and based anywhere in northwestern France, I wouldn't do it if you don't speak French. I'd learn as quick as possible, because when I arrived in France, I didn't speak any French. But I spent a lot of time learning and taking classes and using the radio and speaking with every person I could on the street, even during COVID, and just trying to understand and get quicker, because a lot of it also is street language, and it's a language that, especially in sailing, chicken can mean a lot of different things. So it's quite something. So it's cool. It's a cool learning experience to understand and see how these guys sail, because I think my favorite part about sailing in that part of France is that you don't really see the egos as you do in super yacht sailing. So it's more really just a general love and understanding of the ocean, and that's what the beauty is all about. And so now moves on to my future ambitions. So obviously, the mini transat is what I'm trying to be a record breaker for now. I'd be the first American woman in a prototype to do it. I'd like to do it both ways. I'd like to sail to the Caribbean and sail it back, and try to make a name for myself in that kind of offshore sailing. It's really the only kind of sailing I want to do. I obviously still work in sailing and do crude sailing as well. I have no problem with that. I love working with a team. It's great, and I still love building boats and understanding how they're built and seeing the future of sailing, especially with foils. As you can see, this is Samantha Davies' boat in my picture on this slide. She was a participant in the Vendée Globe. She has been 3 times, I believe. She sails for Initiatives Cœur, which is she raises money for heart transplants in Africa. So she uses her platform in sailing to do really amazing things, and she's an amazing woman. And as you can see, it's canted steel and has foils. So this is the future of sailing, and the beauty of where sailing is going is no one's experienced in that anymore. In essence, there's naval architects; they know how to make the foils, but the foils are changing shape literally every few months on these boats. So there's not anyone that says that they're the master of this, because everyone's learning at the same rate, because the technology is so quick to change sailing that anyone, I think, can go and make their name for it. And then also, when it comes to age and should you do it young, should you do it old, or how does it work in sailing? Women, men. The last Vendée Globe also had Jean Le Cam, which was the oldest man to circumnavigate the globe, and it was his 8th time, I believe, at 68 years old. So there's really no end to anyone's dream in sailing, that's sure. And so my future, I would like to sail for equality and sail for the planet. And what I mean by this is sailing is still quite a male-dominated sport, and I'd like to prove as much as I can with my own platform that I can bring more women into it, inspire more women into it, do what I can in local yacht clubs and other avenues to try to just draw attention to this problem, because it is kind of a problem, and we're getting through it with associations like the Magenta Project, which is a female sailing project to get of all levels, dinghy, Olympic, you name it. But it's something I think we can make better. Like, there's always room to increase awareness for these things. And sailing for the planet, obviously, sailing is one of the least harmful things for the environment. We're doing something to invoke adventure in people's lives, and I think that was especially seen during the last Vendée Globe, where we can really incite passion for nature, in essence, and adventure, which is what adventure is, being in nature. So I think we can teach a lot of people about these things. And yeah, so my ultimate goal in the future would be to participate in the Vendée Globe, for sure. I think it always has been since I was a kid, and that's where I go, but also using these sailing platforms to draw more attention to the sport and to keep going. And so this is an article written by Kelly McLinn in the Sailing World magazine on how to get more women into competitive sailing. And just so you understand at home what the actual percentages are in the world of sailing, only 16% of competitors across all regattas were women. Many classes were even more male-dominated. 11% of classes had less than 5% women. Only 12% of classes had more than 30% female participation, and less than 1% of classes had more than 50% women. The vast majority of sailors, 78%, are competing in classes that have less than 20% women. The trend gets even worse in professional sailing. Based on world sailing classifications, only 5% of professional sailors competing at regattas in our data were women. And I think we can change that, pretty sure. 5% is quite low. So that's that's definitely something moving forward. I would definitely like to emphasize and work towards. And without a captain's license, I wouldn't be here with this ideal. And this association, the Pro Captains Association, can really bring together people to work towards these things and give a platform for people in America to and all over to talk and tackle some of these problems we have in our industry. And so to close out, this is a picture of the Vendée Globe start line, and Walt Disney, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So I think that's the next step, is to just keep on going. And at the bottom, I've put a link to the GoFundMe I started to fund my campaign and my projects for the future.
Thank you, Madison. I think she's gonna try to pull up her her GoFundMe site here so everyone can see what that looks like. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Lovely. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody, for hearing me chat for so long.
Thank you, Madison. This has been phenomenal. I do want to encourage folks to support Madison if you can. I know she'd appreciate the help. I'm curious, Madison, where the funds that you'll raise here, where they will be spent. What does this help you with?
So these funds actually help with everything. When it comes to, because I was renting a boat, they go to the rental of the boat, basically the charter price of the boat. I do all of the work myself when it comes to like carbon repairs and painting, and I've done some work with I've had a lot of electrolysis on another boat, so I had to take down a lot of the aluminum stanchions and make sure that they were sealed and painted, and redoing some wiring and paying for the different certifications, which I now have. So and gear, foul leads, things like that. But all of that I post on there. And I just wrote an article that's in this week of Boat Builder magazine, Pro Boat magazine, about the last carbon fiber repair I did on the boat I was renting, and how that process went.
Fabulous. If you want to stop sharing screen, we have a few more minutes here. We can open. Oh, and thank you, Kent. Kent's put the link into the chat. If anyone wants the link for the GoFundMe, it's there in the chat. That's super helpful.
Perfect.
But I've been jotting down some notes, and I have some questions for you, but I want to open the floor up for our live audience here. If there's anyone who wants to ask Madison anything directly, I can tell you I am blown away with your dedication to this project and all of the work that you've done, and you're just incredibly dialed in and able to speak about what drives you and motivates you, and I just think it's fantastic. So if there's anyone out there who would like to chime in, please feel free. Take yourself off of mute if needed, or put it into the chat.
Oh, yeah, I've got the chat.
I have a question. So how much is this going to cost you, Madison? Do you self-fund for your own boat?
Yeah, so I cover probably right now 80% of what I've done, and then generated 20% from donations and private funding. The idea is, for me, is to get a sponsor, really a title large sponsor, which I've been in the process of looking for. Now, I've gotten several technical sponsors. So when it comes to rigging, I can get all of the ropes sponsored and whatnot, but it's just the chartering of the boats that does it. That's 100,000 euros, almost $100,000, and that's on the lower scale of it. And so every every other thing, I found technical sponsors to cover the paints, the rigging, a lot of different parts, different bits and pieces for the deck, different fittings. When it comes to electricians, I have friends in that from the super yacht industry or any sort of promotional video of the boat that can get covered by people. But yeah, it's the main thing is the sponsor to cover the boat itself.
Have you sent private letters to corporations, or how are you tackling that?
And probably now I would guess 1,500 different emails, if not more. I first started with an America kind of specific thing because of my nationality being the US. And then now I've kind of changed it to be more international. I was speaking with a Swiss company for quite some time. I've spoken with Swedish companies, and then now back in France has been probably the easiest for me in recent days/months, because I can write the emails in French, and they already sponsor sailing. So the factor that their company is usually more interested to be involved with me because it brings the American market to whatever business they own. So that's where I'm at now. But the American ones are hard because they're not really used to being involved in sailing unless it's Oracle, which you can't, unless you know someone at those big companies, no one's going to accept a cold call. That was a big lesson for me to anyone else out there that's looking to do this.
Thanks for that.
No problem.
Any other questions here? I have one for you. I'm just curious about, you mentioned some of the intense training that you have to go through for the mini Transat, and not only is it safety training and you know, obviously you have to be ready to solve any kind of technical issues that come up with the vessel itself while you're out there, but you mentioned also having to prove sort of the mental stamina, being by yourself at sea for long stretches, being reliant on yourself. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to what that's like, being out there by yourself for such long stretches of time, and also kind of how that is measured or monitored or supported for you. Oop, hopefully.
So that is something in sailing. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So in this kind of sailing, the mental side of it is you have to want this, and to make it to that point, if you're not clear with yourself, you'll figure that out very quickly, and then probably retire from one of these smaller races. But how I see it personally, what makes me happy, and what I actually learned from a French sailor that sailed on the America's Cup teams, but is also a Kiwi, also sing and dance by yourself, then you shouldn't be doing it. And I 100% agree, because that when I go offshore, I mean, I just sing as loud as possible. And that really, yeah, I have no problem with that. And yeah, you have when you get tired because you are on these strange sleep patterns. And for anyone else, I think eating freeze-dried food would be a problem doing it a lot, but me, I don't mind. It's fine. It's okay. But yeah, I think for me, when you're really struggling, to have like you get notes from your friends or your loved ones that you put in the boat, or they sign their name in your boat so you can see it. Most sailors do bring stuffed animals, and I am one of those. Yeah, I bring the stuffed animal. I like it. It's nice. It makes me happy to look at. And yeah, then maybe like one special food stuff because you're eating like freeze-dried food. Some people like just want olive oil or some kind of special chocolate or candy. But yeah, for me, the singing, anytime I've ever felt sick or unhappy, I've played music.
Fantastic. What's the longest you've been out single-handing so far?
So far, it's about 5 days.
Okay.
And then the mini transat in total, for everybody that knows, this is a super average statement, but it would be about 7 days for each leg. So you'll be about 14 days total. It can take longer, obviously, if you're in a slower boat. The idea is to be the quickest, but yeah, I would put it around 14 days total.
Okay.
With all your own food and water on board.
Yeah. Kent, did
I
you
have a
want to?
question.
Oh, there we go.
I have
Okay.
a question. I have a compliment and a question. I wanted to compliment you on your positive attitude, but your ownership of the hurdles that lie ahead of you. You know, at no point have you, complained about them. You've just shown your strategy, which I think is very, very commendable. So that was sort of one of the takeaways that I had. And then my question was, will you come back, please, and update us? I think we're all going to want to hear and follow and be kept up to speed.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I'm not fully fluent in French, but give it a month and I'll be there.
Yeah.
I love your ambition.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Madison.
No, also, I'll have to add in one more thing. Oh, the one last takeaway is anytime anyone is like not friendly in a shipyard, is don't stop smiling. Just keep going. I've been turned down from so many shipyards, but just keep trying. Like, just don't let it get to you. Just keep going in as many languages as you want.
Very good advice. Thank you very much. This has been such a treat, Madison.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I could carry on this conversation for another hour, I'm sure, easily. But we really appreciate your time today. And just as a reminder for everybody, we will post this on our YouTube channel, the recorded version. So share it far and wide with your friends and family. Let people know about Madison's mission. And we really hope you get all the support that you need. If there's anything we can do here at Pro Captains Association, we are a network here for each other. So we appreciate your efforts and your hard work, and we want to support that as much as we can.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.